right, good morning, everyone. My name is Edith Brady. I'm the director here at the High Point Museum, and I want to welcome you this morning. We are thrilled to finally be able to get this program series started again in the museum. As you know, we were closed for a very long time, getting our roof and our HVAC system replaced here in the museum, and so we ended up really not being able to do our fall series of these programs, but we are back in business and really happy to have you here today. One thing I want to bring to your attention, if you have a little bit of time after the program is over, in the next room in our changing gallery, we have a traveling exhibit from Preservation, North Carolina called We Built This, and it is about African-American architects and builders in North Carolina and features some of the different people as well as the different buildings that they contributed to the landscape here in North Carolina. And we have a small section also that features Fred Lander, who is an architectural draftsman from here at High Point, and then some information about some other brick layers and brick masons and brickyard owners that were here at High Point that contributed a lot to the commercial landscape that we see on Main Street. Some of their buildings are still here today. So take an opportunity to walk around and look at that exhibit before you leave, because that exhibit will only be up through January 31st, and then it will leave, and we'll have a new exhibit that will be coming in that space in early February. So I'm going to turn things over to Laura Allred from the Historical Society, and she will introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Yes.
Welcome, everyone. It is wonderful to see such a great crowd on such a cold morning. Thank you for braving the weather to be here. We're very excited to restart our monthly educational programs presented by the High Point Historical Society. And I am privileged to serve as one of the board of directors for this year. With that reopening of the museum, as Edith said, we're also restarting our monthly series as an educational experience to explore a specific historical topic each time and discover the relationship to the history of High Point and our surrounding community. Today, we are privileged to hear more about the role of the Quakers in abolition and Underground Railroad, and even in women's suffrage, something that I hadn't even realized. So leading our exploration of this topic today is Linda Willard. Linda is author of a book titled Quaker Abolitionist, Breaking the Chains of Oppression. She has researched the lives of over 60 Quaker men and women in preparation for writing her book, and she has copies of it here for sale if you'd like one. Linda is a native of High Point, and she's active in numerous local history and cultural organizations. For her retirement, Linda worked with the guidance office at Penn Griffin School for the Arts, and her love of history has led her to research the area Quakers and to showcase them in several publications that she's written. In 1997, it was Who, What, When, Where, Quaker Trivia. And then in 2002, another publication titled Quakers Preserved. And then in 2008, a publication titled Quakers in Conflict. Most recently, she's partnered with historian Phyllis Bridges to co-author the Book of Ancestry, Forgotten Ones of Oakwood Cemetery. So that sounds very exciting to me. I love cemeteries. Linda, we welcome you, and thank you so much for leading us in this exploration of our shared history.
Welcome. No.
I want to thank the museum for inviting me to speak to you today, and for all of you coming out on such a frigid, cold day today. But at least nothing frozen is falling from the sky. That's a plus. As they said, I am the author of 4 books about Quakers and one about the cold section at Oakwood Cemetery. I think of myself as an accidental writer. None of my books have really been planned. They all happened because of something or someone said either to me or something I heard on TV. My first book, Who, What, When, Where, Quaker Trivia, was truly, as the artist Bob Ross used to say, a happy little accident.
That's it.
My husband Harold and I were attending a Kilfring meeting at that time. I was trying to educate some of the younger members about Quaker history, and I found some interesting information that absolutely astounded me. It was something I saw on the internet that said Samuel Nicholas, a Pennsylvania Quaker, is considered to be the first commandant of the United States Marine Corps. And as you know, Quakers are considered to be pacifists. This really was astounding. And I know that not everything you see on the internet is correct. So I contacted the United States Marine Corps, and they confirmed that they do consider Samuel Nicholas to be the first commandant of the Marine Corps. After meeting for worship one Sunday, I shared this information with the pastor, Billy Fred. Billy said, "Linda, you could write a book." And I honestly thought Billy had probably lost his mind. I had never written anything up in school papers or personal correspondence. I also thought that I didn't know anything to write a book about. However, I kept niggling in my brain until finally I realized that maybe I did know something to write a book about. I typed up several of the questions and answers I had been using in my effort to educate the younger members of the meeting about Quaker history. I thought that the best chance to get it published would be through the publication board of the North Carolina yearly meeting. I asked Billy who I should send this manuscript to and where I should send it. He gave me the name and address of the person to send it to. I more or less put it out of my mind, thinking that I had probably just wasted postage. I was totally astounded when I got a phone call a few weeks later saying that the publications board would be meeting at a certain date and time, and would I be available to meet with them to discuss the manuscript. I met with the publications board and found that if I would provide some citations for the questions and additional questions, they would be interested in publishing the manuscript. The next book was also Quaker trivia. The third book is what eventually led me to writing the book about Quaker Abolitionist. Excuse me. I was listening to TV one day. I say listening because I don't really watch TV. It's just background while I'm knitting or reading. During the last gubernatorial race, Morris Robinson, our former lieutenant governor, was airing one of his campaign commercials. In this commercial, he stated that he didn't see anything wrong with slavery, and that slavery was ever reinstated, he would probably purchase a slave or two. But I could not believe that an African-American man would stand up on TV and say there was nothing wrong with slavery, and he might even purchase a slave or two. Prior to seeing his commercial, I had planned to write another book about the Quakers who had fought in some war. I had even planned the cover and written some of the biographical sketches. I immediately put this on hold and decided that the next book would be about Quaker Abolitionists. Finding information on abolitionists proved to be rather difficult, particularly if they were also associated with the Underground Railroad. Obviously, you weren't going to post a sign at the end of your driveway saying, "Runaway slaves, welcome here." The first Quaker abolitionist I will tell you about is Cyrus Bushell. Bushell was the son of a Quaker lawyer and an enslaved African-American woman. After the death of her husband, Bushell's mother arranged for the sale of Cyrus Bushell to Thomas Pryor. Pryor was to allow Bushell to train as an apprentice baker and earn enough money to purchase his freedom. Bushell isn't nice he used to. It isn't like Bushell used to make. He already purchased his freedom. However, he was one of 104 enslaved persons freed by the Burlington, New Jersey Quarterly Meeting of Friends between 1763 and 1769. Bushell became a brewer, baker, and ardent abolitionist. During the American Revolutions, Bushell worked as a baker supplying the bread for George Washington's troops. Bushell died in 1806, and is buried in the Eaton Cemetery in Collingdale, New Jersey. Mary Ann Chad Carey was the oldest of 13 children of staunch abolitionists Abraham Doris Chad and Harriet Parnell Chad. Carey received at least part of her education in a school operated by Quakers. In 1840, she opened a school for African American students. In 1851, she opened a school in Canada for children of fugitive slaves. In 1852, Carey wrote Notes on Canada West in an effort to persuade African Americans to move to Canada. In March of 1853, she began publishing the Provincial Freeman. This was the voice of Canada's African American communities and fought for abolitionist tragedies. After the death of her husband in 1860, Carey and her daughter moved to Washington, D.C., where she entered Howard University. Carey became the first African-American woman to earn a law degree. Carey was also active in the women's rights movement and worked alongside Susan B. Anthony. Carey also has the distinction of being the first woman to vote in a national election. Carey died in Washington, D.C. in 1893. She is buried in the National Harmony Memorial Park Cemetery in Landover, Maryland. The family of Alida Clausen Clark was originally from North Carolina. However, to escape the practice of slavery, the family moved to a farm near Richmond, Indiana. In 1844, Clausen married her first cousin, Calvin Clark. At the age of 18, Clark began teaching school in winter and farming in the summer. The Clarks operated the orphanage and school for 2 years. In 1869, the Freedmen Bureau closed school. At that time, the care of the school was left entirely up to the Indiana Yearly Meeting. The Clarks remained at Southland College until their death in 1892 and 1909. North Carolina was fortunate that we did not have a large slave population, thanks in part to the Outer Banks, which made it difficult for large ships to come directly into North Carolina. I would like to think it may have been also due to our fairly large Quaker population. I could only find 3 abolitionists with a North Carolina connection. Addison Coffin was born in 1822 in the New Garden section of Guilford County. The Coffin family was related to the Coffins of Nantucket Island, who had originally settled that part of Guilford County. Coffin was well known for his abolitionist activity, as well as for the establishment of Sabbath schools, timber societies, and the promotion of women's rights. Like many others of his day, he farmed in the summer and worked for abolition and women's rights in the winter. Addison Coffin remained in North Carolina for several years, lecturing on temperance, education, and women's rights. In 1843, Coffin walked 500 miles from Guilford County, North Carolina, to Cincinnati, Ohio, where he visited North Carolina immigrants and attended the first National Abolition Convention in 1845. Coffin moved to Indiana permanently, where his home became a haven for widows, orphans, and conscientious objectors. Coffin died in 1897 and is buried in a cemetery at Haley Friend Meeting in Hendricks County, Indiana. The next Quaker abolitionist is probably the best well-known of all the abolitionists. Levi Coffin is often referred to as the president of the Underground Railroad. Coffin was born in 1789 in the New Garden community of Guilford County. In 1819, Coffin joined the First Manumission Society of Guilford County. In about 1821, Coffin and his cousin Vestal Coffin organized a school for slaves. There was a great deal of interest from the slaves and a great deal of opposition from the local white residents of the area. At this time, slaves were forbidden from attending school. In 1824, Coffin and his wife Catherine moved to what is now Fountain City, Indiana. The Coffins determined that their home was on the route of the Underground Railroad. His home was often referred to as the Grand Central Station of the Underground Railroad. Coffin opened a store in Newport, Indiana, and quickly became a prominent and wealthy business leader. In 1842, Coffin's Quaker meeting advised all members to cease any membership in the Abolitionist Society. I have no explanation for that. Coffin refused and was removed from membership in a local meeting. In 1847, Coffin moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, where he opened a warehouse selling only goods produced by free labor, non-slave goods. At the end of slavery, Coffin traveled to the Midwestern states, France, and England, forming societies to provide food, clothing, and funds to assist in educating former slaves. In the 1870s, Coffin retired and spent the last year of his life writing his autobiography. Coffin died in 1877, age was 78. Coffin's grave was unmarked until 1902, when the African Americans in Cincinnati, Ohio, erected a monument in his honor. As early as 1819, Vestal Coffin, the next abolitionist at Vestal Coffin, was son of William Coffin Jr. and his wife Elizabeth Vestal Coffin. Coffin was born on October 10, 1792, again in the New Garden community of Guilford County. As early as 1819, Coffin established an Underground Railroad station in Guilford County. First mentioned Vestal Coffin as an abolitionist when he assisted John Demery, a former slave. Demery was supposed to have been freed at the death of his master. Unfortunately, the heirs of the former master refused to honor the terms of the will. The heirs kidnapped Demery, who managed to escape and made his way to the Guilford Woods back in present-day Guilford College. Demery requested aid from Vestal Coffin. Coffin was able to assist Demery and use the Underground Railroad to get Demery to freedom in Wayne County, Indiana. In 1821, Vestal and Levi Coffin established a school to teach black enslaved African Americans to read and write. Coffin was active in the Underground Railroad from 1819 until his death in 1826. After his death, his wife Althea and sons Addison continued to work with the abolition movement and the Underground Railroad. Some abolitionists tried to work within the existing political system to secure freedom for the enslaved people. John Cooper in New Jersey was one such abolitionist. Cooper was born in 1730 in Woodbury, New Jersey. He is thought to be the main author of the New Jersey Constitution. Cooper also served as one of the first judges of Gloucester County, New Jersey. Cooper was an outspoken opponent of slavery. Cooper favored gradual approach to emancipation. Cooper served in the Provincial Congress of New Jersey 1775 to 1776. In 1776, Cooper was elected as a delegate to the Second Continental Congress. In 1776, Cooper proposed legislation in the New Jersey Council to abolish slavery. The proposed legislation was not successful. New Jersey was the last northern state to abolish slavery. Cooper died in 1785 and is buried in the Woodbury Friends burial ground in Woodbury, New Jersey. Many abolitionists also worked diligently to educate enslaved African Americans. Prudence Crandall was a leader in the education of African Americans. Crandall was born in 1803 in Carpenter's Mill, Rhode Island. When Crandall was 10 years old, the family moved to Canterbury, Connecticut, where her father taught school. In 1833, Crandall and her sister Almira purchased a house and established Canterbury Female Boarding School. The purpose of the school was to educate young ladies tidy. In 1833, Crandall opened one of the first boarding schools in Connecticut for African American females. This was met with fierce opposition of town people. When Crandall or her students left school, they were met with taunts, threats, and violence. In 1833, the Canterbury legislature passed the Blue Law, making it illegal to operate a school to teach African Americans from any state other than Connecticut. Crandall was arrested and jailed. Her first trial ended in hung jury. In 1834, mob broke most of the windows of the school building and broke the furniture as well. In 1835, Crandall married Calvin Filio, a Baptist minister. Crandall and her husband moved to Illinois, where Crandall opened a school and worked in the women's suffrage movement. After the death of her husband in 1836, Crandall moved to Kansas to live with her brother. In 1836, the citizens of Canterbury attempted to make amends with Crandall and gave her a small pension. Crandall died in 1890 and is buried in the Oak Falls Cemetery in Oak Falls, Kansas. Mary Ann Wilson McClintock and Thomas McClintock were a formidable team of abolitionist women's rights workers. Wilson was born in 1800 in Warrenton, New Jersey. In 1820, she married fellow Quaker Thomas McClintock. In 1836, the family moved from New Jersey to Waterloo, New York. The family attended a meeting held by Mary Ann. The meeting they attended recognized Mary Ann as a minister and a Quaker leader. On July 8, 1848, Mary Ann became an organizer of the first Women's Rights Convention, where she joined a group of friends and relatives in supporting women's rights. On July 16th of the same year, Mary Ann and others drafted the Declaration of Sentiments. In addition to his abolitionist work, Thomas actively championed other causes such as temperance and Native American rights. Both McClintocks organized anti-slavery petitions, provided refuge for escaping slaves, and continued their work with the Free Prudence movement. Lucretia Coffin Mott is one of the best-known female Quaker abolitionists. Mott was born on Nantucket Island, Massachusetts, in 1793. Her mother was a cousin of Benjamin Price. When Mott was 10 years old, the family moved to Boston. In 1811, Mott married James Mott, one of her teachers at the Quaker boarding school, New Partners. At the age of 28, Mott became a recorded Quaker minister. She traveled throughout the colonies in England, preaching regarding her thought on the divine light within everyone. She also spoke about women's rights, free produce, and anti-slavery. In 1840, Mott was one of the 6 American women who attended the General Anti-Slavery Convention in London, England. Just prior to the meeting, the men voted to exclude participation by the American women. The women were forced to sit in a segregated area. Mott died in 1880 and is buried in the burial ground of Philadelphia. Amy Kirby Post was born in Jericho, New Jersey in 1802. In 1828, Post married her brother-in-law, Isaac Post. In 1836, the family moved to Rochester, New York. At this time, Post became active in the anti-slavery movement. In 1837, Post signed a petition against slavery. Post's home became a station on the Underground Railroad. During the Civil War, Post used her vast regional anti-slavery network to collect food, clothing, and medical supplies for the newly freed slaves. Post was also active in the women's rights movement. In 1848, Post attended the Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York. Post participated in debates and signed the Declaration of Sentiments. Shortly after the Women's Rights Convention, Post and two syndicats formed the Working Women's Protective Union. This group worked to secure wage increases for working women. In 1872, Post attempted to vote in the national election. She was not allowed to vote, but did succeed in registering to vote. Post died in 1882 and is buried in the Mount Hope Cemetery in Rochester, New York. Dr. Mary Frame Myers Thomas was born in 1816, probably in Montgomery County, Maryland. She grew up with the belief that all people were valuable. Her family moved to Lisbon, Ohio, where she met and married Dr. Thomas. Dr. Owen Thomas. Thomas studied medicine in Wabash County, Indiana. In 1854, she graduated from the Louisiana Medical College for Women. During the Civil War, Thomas worked in the Sanitary Commission, carrying supplies by steamships, steamship, to the front lines of the war. On her return, she nursed soldiers wounded in the Battle of Vicksburg. She later served as an assistant physician with her husband, who was an Army contract surgeon. From 1867 until her death in 1888, she served as the physician for the Home for Friendless Women in Richmond, Indiana. In addition to her work in abolition, Thomas was also active in the women's rights movement. Thomas designated that pallbearer at her funeral should all of these women, representing the Good Templars, the Women's Christian Temperance Union, the Women's Suffrage Association, and the Home for Friendless Women, and two African American women to represent the abolition cause. Toby Thomas is buried in the Maple Grove Cemetery in Hartford, Michigan. There are two additional abolitionists that I would like to tell you about. Unfortunately, neither one is in my book, because I signed the information late trying to publish the book. The first person is Isaac Cody. Cody lived in LeClaire, Iowa Territory. Cody was a Quaker and an ardent abolitionist. He is best known as the father of Buffalo Bill Cody. Buffalo Bill was raised as a Quaker, but it's unknown if he ever attended a Quaker meeting as an adult. However, Cody, like his father, was very anti-slavery. The other person is William Hickok, the father of James Butler Hickok, better known as Wild Bill Hickok. William Hickok was also an ardent abolitionist, just like Buffalo Bill Cody. It is not known if Wild Bill Hickok attended a Quaker meeting as an adult. Wild Bill Hickok was also anti-slavery, apparently was not an active abolitionist. If you would like to learn more about the abolitionists, I have books for sale. They're $15. Again, thank you all for coming out. Bye.
We thank you, Linda, for sharing your expertise, your knowledge with us today. Thank you all for attending this meeting, and we look forward to your continued interest and support. This program was presented by the High Point Historical Society. We strive to collect, preserve, and showcase the history of Greater High Point, to foster a shared appreciation of our community as reflected in the stories, events, and traditions of our past. We extend an open invitation to each of you to become a member of the Historical Society, and you can find membership information on the museum webpage, as well as upcoming program information. But there is a sheet in your chairs detailing the next 3 programs that we will have scheduled Also, this program and previous programs have been recorded, are available on the High Point Museum website or on their YouTube channel. So if you would like to pull up something from the past, one that you've missed, or any future ones that you're not able to get to and have an interest in, please check out the website. At this time, I would like to introduce Julie Raynor, who will talk about the next program we have in February, on February 21st, which will be a Saturday. Julie is also a member of the Historical Society. She's a past president, and she is marketing director at the High Point Public Library. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Laura. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Linda. That was really insightful. Appreciate hearing it. It's like, what a great way to start out our new educational series. I'm really excited to share with all of you, if you didn't know, the High Point Public Library is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. November 11th will be our mark our 100th year exactly. And leading up to that event, we're going to be having a series of programs all throughout the year. We're starting out next month. We're going to be collaborating, partnering with the Historical Society, and we're going to be offering a program on the legacy of the Washington Street Branch Library. And we're actually going to have the event at the Washington Street, the last location for that branch, which is 201 4th Street here at High Point. We're going to have a panel discussion with several folks, and we're going to be looking at sort of the past, present, and future impact of that space of the library, of the Washington Street Branch Library, and the Washington Street community, and its impact that it's had on High Point as a whole. And then coming up, and that's, like Laura said, it's a Saturday, so it's a Saturday morning. That was when they were available to host us, and also hopefully will open up so that folks that are working during the week would be able to attend it as well. And then coming up in March, back here at the museum, we're going to be also collaborating with the Historical Society on March the 18th, and looking at ladies who lead high educational pioneers. Also giving a nod to the fact that it was the High Point Women's Club that started the library back in 1926. So I have information about the anniversary events on the back table right next to the membership information of the Historical Society. So if you're interested in either one of those, please help yourself. And yeah, if you have any other questions about the anniversary, just let me know. Yes.
Do you have Larry planning for doing the genealogy type presenting here?
Yes, thank you for asking that. Many of you probably already know that we're having, America is having its 250th anniversary coming up, and along with the library's 100th anniversary programs, the library at the museum and the Historical Society are offering a variety of different historical programs throughout the year as well. Larry Cates is one of the librarians that works in our Heritage Research Center at the library. They focus on local history and genealogy, and he is working, that staff there is working on a variety of programs along those lines. The museum's webpage has a list of all those programs that are coming up, so feel free to check those out as well. So yeah, thank you.